you, Your Worship. In your on-table folder, you will find correspondence. This is added as H01.
Yes.
And there's a number of pieces of correspondence. I believe there are 14 pieces of correspondence attached to the comment box from staff.
Yes.
Regarding an urgent request for a motion calling for the CEAA Federal Environmental Assessment of Tilbury LNG proposal on the Fraser River.
Thank you. And we have a covering note here from the CIO's office. We have a mover and a seconder. Any discussion? Councillor Canucks.
Thank you, Mayor Jackson. Well, we've had a number of phone calls, and as in our package, there's a number of letter writers writing to request that the environmental assessment process for the proposed WesPac LNG export terminal at Tilbury be reviewed as part of an a federal environmental assessment. And we have a cover note here from our staff stating that with reference to the attached correspondence addressed to Council, as previously reported to Council, staff have already requested that the project be subject to a federal environmental assessment. So through you to staff, Mayor Jackson, I just wanted to confirm that the note goes on to explain the differences and just maybe that if that point could be elaborated on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Would that be Mr. McGill or Mr. Harvey? Mr. McGill, thank you very much. Very lengthy summation here. Would you like to maybe just recap, please?
Your Worship, thank you. So that is correct. Staff have already, June 11th, we wrote in requesting that it's subject to a full federal assessment. A lot of this discussion that we have before us is whether or not substitution takes place or not. And for clarity, substitution does not mean that the federal government's out of the process. They harmonize the process with the provincial environmental process. So they sit on the panel. There's two independent decisions that come out of it. Just recently, actually, the first, since 2012, the last week, the first decision has come out of this substitution process of an LNG plant in Kitimat, which is significantly larger than what's being proposed here. And they had two separate decisions came out. The federal decision had 50 binding requirements. The provincial one had 20. They're similar, but the federal requirements focused on things under federal jurisdiction, First Nations requirements, fisheries, migratory birds, stuff like that. So by going forward with a substitution process does not mean that the federal government's out of the process. It's just a harmonized process that they go through at the same time.
Thank you. Just for clarification, we did write to the Minister and ask that there be a federal lead on the EA process. June 11th. Your
Worship, we have written into the process requesting that there's a federal review. It does trigger a federal review, and in BC, since CEA 2012 has been initiated, every time it triggers a federal review, there is a federal review. So we have, yes, requested that a federal review takes place, but it may not be a separate review. It may be part of the substitution process, a harmonized review.
Is that information on our website, or could that letter be available for the public? Because there's a number of letter writers who are requesting that. I'm just wondering if either this summary and or our letter could be placed on our website.
Your Worship, we can put both up, and we'll put the summary up on there. It'll be up there tomorrow.
Do you need a motion to do that? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for me. Thank you, Mayor Jackson. I think this is underway, and we're keeping an eye on this project. And as others have alluded to, there have been some surprises along the way in terms of the add-ons to the expansion at Tilbury and WesPac. So we look forward to the initiation of the EA process. Thank you.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, the only addition was the change in hydro. Did I miss something? What additions?
Your Worship, just for clarity, we haven't even commented yet on the environmental process. So this is just this whole discussion is around the idea of whether a federal review is required, and on this idea of substitution. Delta staff will be invited to be part of the process as well, so we will be reviewing everything. So I think that what's being referred to is the idea that Councillor Payton raised earlier, is that the hydro lines for the LNG site, not necessarily for WesPac. We don't have an application yet for the WesPac, so staff will be full reporting out on this, on all the environmental aspects as it comes forward.
Thank you.
And Mayor Jackson, for clarity, what I was referring to, and actually we had the discussion at our council table previously, it was actually in relation to the Fortis expansion. And Fortis is going to, we've asked that Fortis come and speak with us about that, that when they came to speak with the expansion did not include WesPac, the information relating to WesPac and their export permit and or the proposed power line, additional power line request. So there are a lot of additions to that project.
But those were all separate things that had to come forward under separate. Mr. Harvey, I think there's. I don't want to leave this that something has gone really wrong and we haven't done our due diligence. Mr. Harvey, please.
Your Worship, the environmental assessment subject tonight is dealing with WesPac.
Yes.
Fortis expansion has gone through a rezoning public hearing in front of this council, and they've met all the regulatory requirements.
Yes.
One of the side issues that came up is that they knew they needed more power, but it wasn't until they proposed running the lines through the agricultural community, as Councillor Payton had mentioned. That is the subject we're working on now. It's separate. The environmental assessment is dealing with a proposed LNG export on the water lot lease connected to nearby Fortis. So there's no new pipeline. Your Worship is dealing with can they get permission to have export of LNG to the water lot lease, which is located just offshore from the Fortis plant.
Thank you.
And Your Worship, after we meet with Fortis, we will be providing a briefing note to all members of council.
Thank you very much. Because with these, some of these issues, people get a little piece of information and suddenly everyone has the wrong information or part of the information, and that doesn't help anything. So I just want to make sure that people understand exactly where we are with this issue, and I think we've monitored it very well and very closely. Mr. Harvey?
Your Worship, that's a good point. Just on the Fortis plant, it went through all our regular requirements for any development. It went through public information meetings that Fortis held on their own. And again, as I mentioned, it went through a full public hearing, Your Worship. So some of the comments in the letters is just, it's individuals that did not realize that this was happening over a year ago, well over
Absolutely.
a year ago. But again, the environmental assessment subject is with a proposed LNG proposed facility. And Your Worship, there have been workshops with council on that LNG. We brought them in when they were looking at doing an application, so it was no surprise to members of council or this community. And Your Worship will follow through and report to council as we regularly do on these types of applications.
Thank you. And unfortunately, there's some people that don't really quite understand what LNG does, even if it's on water. It's not gasoline, it's not bunker, it's something quite different. And unfortunately, not everyone understands what it actually does do. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I think we've been through all this with Fortis a year and a half.
WesPac
And we spoke to them about what possibilities, but we don't have an application yet. Thank you. Thank you very much.